Light a prayer candle, everyone, to Saint Hillary Clinton, because it seems she knows more about Christianity than anyone else and has put out a new hit piece on our sweet friend, Allie Beth Stuckey. We're breaking it all down and exactly how toxic empathy has poisoned the minds of liberal white women today on the Isabel Brown Show. It seems our friend Allie Beth Stuckey, host of the Relatable podcast and truly one of my favorite other creators, she is a real one on and off screen, and it's been a pleasure to become really great friends with her over the years. It seems that she has made it to the big leagues because she has a new hit piece written about her in the mainstream media. Not that that's new for any of us, but this is the new part, written by, of all people, Hillary Rodham Clinton. Whew! When you have a hit piece put on you by the Clintons, I think that's how you know you really made it to the big leagues. And I just want to say this for the record as we start our conversation today about toxic empathy and the hijacking of our emotions from the radical left, specifically trying to brainwash liberal white women into the worst type of action for society. Allie Beth Stuckey is a very happy, joyful person. She is not suicidal. She loves her life. She loves her family. She loves her podcast and the vocation that God has put her on this planet for. I just think that's important to state for the record in case there's any confusion about that in the next several months. Hillary Clinton, in all of her free time now, considering she's just doing nothing for society at large except racking up gazillion-dollar speaker fees to tell you that conservatives should be thrown in prison for their social media posts. Not even an exaggeration. She actually said that. In all of this woman's free time, has taken the time to publish a piece in The Atlantic called MAGA's War on Empathy. And throughout this massively long essay that we will go through a bit together this morning, because I think it's important to unpack bit by bit, she specifically attacks, of all people, Allie Beth Stuckey and this whole concept of toxic empathy that was the subject of Allie Beth's last book that came out a little over a year ago, and the recurring conversation that she's been having on her podcast about how liberal white women, mostly evangelical liberal white women, this is a trend that we are seeing on the internet, are having absolute meltdowns with every single manufactured outrage cycle that we've seen in American politics and culture for the last several years. And let me remind you, we did a whole episode about this on our show last week, talking about this manufactured outrage cycle, starting with the really first example I could think of in the era of modern politics in the last decade, the Women's March and all of the women wearing their knit private part hats, and then that transitioning into the Black Lives Matter protests, that transitioning into the Hamas campouts on college campuses, and now everything that we're seeing with the ICE protests that, yes, now actually involve, from last Friday, teachers taking their kindergarten classrooms outside to hold signs and scream that they're protesting ICE. I even saw some videos on X this last weekend of teachers bringing their children out from the classrooms and holding signs, children holding signs that said F Trump, F ICE, F the government, all of the things. So that's where we're at as a society and as the result of toxic empathy. But Hillary Clinton has a whole lot to say about this, and it's not her first time lecturing the world about everything. I feel like maybe we should clean up our own houses before we really start throwing stones at people, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. But it seems Hillary Clinton, because she couldn't make it as the president of the United States, is now putting the crown on herself to be the bastion of Christian values and all things theology for the world, according to this piece. Listen to this. MAGA's War on Empathy. The crisis in Minneapolis reveals a deep moral rot at the heart of Trump's movement. What a headline. We want to talk about moral rot, but okay. Here's how she starts this piece. When I first saw the video of the killing of Alex Preddy, an ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital, I immediately thought of the parable of the Good Samaritan. For the record, he was no longer a nurse at the hospital, by the way. He had been fired several weeks before this incident. I think that's kind of important to note, especially now that we have video footage of joining up with Antifa cells and kicking in car taillights on police cars and spitting on police officers a week before this all happened. Again, the loss of any human life is extremely tragic, and I think we need to understand, regardless of how evil a person is, or how good a person is, the loss of any human life is always tragic. But watch how the media is specifically painting this narrative with no opportunity for any sort of discourse whatsoever. Here's how she continues. Federal agents shot Preddy after he tried to help a woman they had thrown to the ground and pepper sprayed. Jesus tells us to love our neighbors as ourselves and help those in need. Do this and you will live, he says. Not in Donald Trump's America. Draw your own conclusions from that first blurb, because your girl has a lot to say, but we're going to try to keep this polite as much as we can today. Americans have now seen, she writes, with their own eyes, the cost of President Trump's abuse of power and disregard for the Constitution. What is it they say about the speck in your own eye before you start hurling? Okay, I don't. Videos of the killing of Preddy and Renee Good by federal agents have exposed the lies of Trump administration officials who were quick to smear the victims as domestic terrorists. Again, we now have confirmed video footage from the BBC of kicking in taillights of a police car, spitting on police officers. We know that they were part of a signal chat, Okay. Even Americans who have grown habituated to Trump's excesses have been shaken by these killings and the reflectively cruel and dishonest response from the administration. This crisis also reveals a deeper moral rot at the heart of Trump's MAGA movement. This will be good. Whatever you think about immigration policy, how can a person of conscience justify the lack of compassion and empathy for the victims in Minnesota and for the families torn apart or hiding in fear, for the children separated from their parents or afraid to go to school? That compassion is weak and cruelty is strong has become an article of the MAGA faith. Trump and his allies believe that the more inhumane the treatment, the more likely it is to spread fear. That's the goal of surging heavily armed federal forces into blue states such as Minnesota and Maine. Street theater of the most dangerous kind. Other recent presidents, including Joe Biden, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton, didn't call him your husband, which is a little odd, but that's okay, managed to deport millions of undocumented immigrants without turning American cities into battlegrounds or making a show of keeping children in cages. Note how she says making a show of keeping children in cages, because it was President Obama who first put children in quote unquote cages, and the media never showed any of that, so it wasn't a massive spectacle, but it was happening nonetheless. The cruelty is the point, as The Atlantic's Adam Serwer memorably puts it during Trump's first term. The savagery is a feature, not a bug. By contrast, as he noted in these pages, the people of Minnesota have responded with an approach you could call neighborism, a commitment to protecting the people around you, no matter who they are or where they came from. To my ears, that's as Christian a value as it gets. The glorification of cruelty and rejection of compassion don't just shape the Trump administration's policies. Those values are also at the core of Trump's own character and worldview. And they have become a rallying cry for the hard-right Christian influencers who are waging a war on empathy. Their twisted campaign validates Trump's personal immorality and his administration's cruelty. It marginalizes mainstream religious leaders who espouse traditional values that conflict with Trump's behavior and agenda. And it threatens to pave the way for an extreme vision of Christian nationalism that seeks to replace democracy with theocracy in America. To my understanding, the only people in America in the political sphere that are remotely pushing for a theocracy are those pushing to implement Sharia law. Democracy itself was founded by Christians, so maybe we should start thinking a little bit more about our history instead of just scared talking points. I don't know. She goes on and goes on and goes on, and then says this: the right-wing Christian podcaster Allie Beth Stuckey called a sermon that she's referencing toxic empathy that is in complete opposition to God's words and in support of the most satanic, destructive ideas ever conjured up. Toxic empathy. What an oxymoron. I don't know if the phrase reflects moral blindness or moral bankruptcy, but either way, it's appalling. This certainly is not what I was taught in Sunday school, not what my reading of the Bible teaches me. Interesting to phrase it that way, almost as if it's important for there to be a moral authority on a correct reading and correct, objectively, interpretation of Scripture instead of just our individual consciences pointing us in one way or another. And this is not what I believe Jesus preached in his short time on earth. Yes, she italicizes, went to Sunday school. In fact, my mother taught Sunday school at our Methodist church in Park Ridge, Illinois. As an adult, I occasionally taught at our church in Little Rock, Arkansas. Some people, such as the Republican congressman who once called me the Antichrist, might find this surprising. When I confronted him, he mumbled something about not having meant it. Trump later appointed that person to his cabinet. I've never been one to wear my faith on my sleeve. Yet you don't say, Hillary Rodham Clinton. But that doesn't mean it's not important to me. Quite the opposite. My faith has sustained me, informed me, saved me, chided me, and challenged me. I don't know who I would be or where I would have ended up without it, so I am not a disinterested observer here. I believe that Christians like me and people of faith more generally have a responsibility to stand up to the extremists who use religion to divide our society and undermine our democracy. I'm sorry, whatever version of Christianity you may be practicing, I am never one to judge where someone is on their faith journey, and I think it's important to know that everyone's faith journey looks differently. God calls us all differently. We all have our own personal relationships with God and wrestling with God in our own individual ways. But to paint yourself as a bastion of Christian values and the spokesperson for Christian theology and people of faith in general, based on, just to start, the policy issues and stances that you hold, means you are not really a practicing Christian. And it doesn't make someone mean or evil or satanic to point that out, actually. Like, just rule number one, if you believe in the killing of babies and you believe that that should be a constitutional right in America, then you're not really a Christian. You don't really believe every human being was created in the image of God and in following the 10 Commandments, including thou shalt not murder. And we could go policy issue by policy issue here, but that seems like a pretty good foundational basis to start. But she keeps going on Allie Beth Stuckey here. And she takes it upon herself to also drag in Erica Kirk, of all people, into this. The contrast between traditional Christian morality, as if Hillary Rodham Clinton is the example of that, and Trumpian amorality, lack thereof, was particularly stark at the memorial service for the slain MAGA activist Charlie Kirk in September. Kirk's widow, Erica, publicly forgave her husband's killer. I forgive him because that is what Christ did, she said. The answer to hate is not hate. The answer, we know from the gospel, is love and always love. It reminded me of the families of the victims of the Mother Emanuel Church massacre in Charleston, South Carolina. In 2015, 9 black worshipers were murdered at an evening Bible study by a young white man trying to start a race war. In court a few days later, one by one, grieving parents and siblings stood up and told the shooter, I forgive you. Instead of being inspired by Erica Kirk's grace, though, Trump rejected it. Evil Trump. I hate my opponent and I don't want what's best for them, he declared. Okay, if you were there among 750,000 other people who were watching online or there in real life, you would know that was a joke. Like, that was just Trump jesting in Trumpian fashion, but okay. He would not forgive his enemies. I'm sorry, Erica, he said. So much, Hillary Clinton says, for love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who persecute you. With leadership like this, it's no wonder that one survey found a quarter of Republicans and nearly 40% of Christian nationalists now agree. Where are we surveying the Christian nationalists, first of all? What survey is going out there door to door to find every single so-called Christian nationalist in America, of which I probably would call myself one? I've never been asked to participate in a survey to say this: empathy is a dangerous emotion that undermines our ability to set up a society that is guided by God's truth. MAGA rejects the teachings of Jesus to love thy neighbor and care for the last, the least, and the lost. Unbelievable. This is exactly the type of mainstream Christian view that enrages Allie Beth Stuckey, the author of Toxic Empathy, who styles herself as a voice for Christian women, has more than 1 million followers on social media. In between lifestyle pitter-patter and her demonization of IVF treatments, she warns women not to listen to their soft hearts. This commissar of MAGA morality targets other evangelicals whose empathy, she warns, has left them open to manipulation. Maybe they don't recognize the humanity of an undocumented immigrant family and decide that mass deportation has gone too far. Or they make space in their heart for a young rape survivor forced to carry a pregnancy to term and start questioning the wisdom and morality of total abortion bans. It's all toxic to Stuckey. The don't love thy neighbor Christians have powerful allies in the war on empathy. Silicon Valley techno-authoritarians, lovely how now we're talking about authoritarianism, Hillary Clinton. But when you claim you want to throw anyone not on your political side in prison or prosecute them for misinformation or hate speech on social media, we're not allowed to call you an authoritarian, only when you are given the arm of the mainstream media to attack people, for which I hope Allie Beth sues you, and we'll come back to that. Now you can call whoever you want an authoritarian. They argue that empathy is weakness and suicidal for civilization because it gets in the way of ruthless ambition and efficiency. That's pretty rich for the crew that's busy building artificial intelligence systems, yada, 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 yada. This is like an 80,000 word essay here, so I'll keep scrolling down to make sure that we get to this part. Another factor of all of this is Trump himself. No one mistakes him for a devout Christian or a person of faith or morality. But his corruption isn't just a personal matter. It taints everything he touches, including his Christian supporters. The conventional wisdom is that Trump says out loud what many others think privately, that his blunt bigotry gives permission for people to throw off the shackles of political correctness and woke piety. That may be partly true. He does bring out the worst in people, but it's more than that. He makes people worse. Cruelty and ugliness are infectious. When they become the norm, they all suffer. We all suffer. So anyone remotely in the sphere of MAGA politics is evil. Anyone who has ever supported Donald Trump or believed in MAGA policies is stupid, is wrong, and is objectively bad and amoral for our society. You're joking. Seriously? And we don't have the logical capacity to see this for the brainwashing that it is, published, of course, in the mainstream media. Unbelievable. Again, this is an incredibly long essay. I encourage you to read the entire thing yourself. But here's how she ends this. And I think the language here is really important because I want you to hear the pulling at your heartstrings. And ironically, in an essay about toxic empathy, the twisting of your empathy to fundamentally manipulate your emotions to believe a different outcome than what is actually happening in reality. Here's what she says. It's especially challenging to feel empathetic for people with whom we disagree passionately. I certainly struggle with this. You may remember that I once described half of Trump supporters as the basket of deplorables. Oh, so we're admitting that now? We're admitting that now. I was talking about the people who are drawn to racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, Islamophobia, you name it. There we go again. Some of those folks, they are irredeemable, I said. Interesting that we are painting ourselves as the bastion of Christian theology that believes no one is irredeemable. And our hope for salvation extends to everyone. She says, I still believe intolerance and hatred are deplorable. Slandering a peaceful protester and cheering his murder is deplorable. Terrorizing children because their parents are undocumented is deplorable. But as a Christian in the year of our Lord 2026, I also aspire to see the goodness in everyone and believe that everyone has a chance at redemption, no matter how remote. Nice to hear that 10 years later, Hillary. When I see brutality like we've all witnessed in Minnesota, I ask myself, can I really find empathy for people who insist on dehumanizing others? I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm still working on it. I believe our hearts are big enough to hold two truths at once. We can see humanity in even the worst of our fellow human beings and still fiercely resist tyranny and repression. We can stand firm without mirroring the cruelty of our opponents. These are dark days in America. To rekindle our light, we must reject cruelty and corruption. To be strong, we need more empathy, not less. Powerfully written piece, if I didn't immediately see through all of it based on who the author is and the fact that I would venture to guess, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope Hillary Clinton dramatically repents from the lifestyle that she's been living and turns around and is suddenly this bastion of empathy and Christianity and hallmark of theology. I doubt that. I would love to be pleasantly surprised. But I kind of see through the fact that she doesn't really mean any of this. And I don't think she means any of it because she spends an entire article on empathy attacking you, attacking more than half the country. Anyone who remotely supports anything related to MAGA as evil, as stupid, as idiotic, and as not really Christian, even though we can't tell anyone whether or not they are actually a Christian or not. But I'm going to tell you, we can't tell anyone that they are beyond redemption, but I'm kind of going to tell you right now, we can't tell anyone whether they are a good or a bad person, but I'm going to tell you that you're a bad person, that you're a racist and a sexist and a xenophobe and an Islamophobe, and that we are heading our way to a post-literate and post-moral society. Because again, you're a dummy. You're a dumbass, basically, is what she's trying to tell you. The amazing thing is that there seems to be zero self-reflection at all here about maybe some personal decisions made that may not have been the most Christian things to do. Like, I don't know, as Secretary of State, abandoning American citizens. Remember the movie 13 Hours? Do we remember? Abandoning American citizens to be brutally attacked by Islamic terrorists. We didn't give a crap. Just abandoning them. Or maybe hiding thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of classified emails. When, as Christians, we believe that darkness needs to come into the light and that truth matters more than lies. Truth prevails overall, and the source of truth is himself, God. Maybe attacking half the country, which you're now like half apologizing for, but you're not really apologizing for in calling anyone who is not a Democrat a deplorable, an evil person lacking morality, which you now have doubled down on in this piece, saying, well, it's not really your fault, it's Trump's fault, but like you got sucked into it because you're an idiot. And anything remotely circulating around MAGA is evil. It is and I quote, a deep moral rot at the heart of Trump's movement. And specifically to attack Allie Beth Stuckey, really? I mean, that just goes to show me that they are terrified of conservative women and feminine voices trying to change the minds of women because they know that they've already lost young men. Young men have been incredibly fortunate to have the voices of Charlie Kirk and Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles and Brandon Tatum and so many others, orienting them back towards traditional masculinity and conservative values, which worked. That decisively delivered a victory for President Trump last November. So the Dems aren't stupid. They might be wrong, but they're not stupid. They know they've lost with young men. Young women is their last stronghold, their last footing, their last opportunity not to lose an entire generation with Gen Z. And when someone is connecting with Gen Z, Allie Beth Stuckey being a prime example of this. I don't know, Producer Dean, do you remember at AmFest there was a poll that came out saying Allie Beth Stuckey was one of the most listened to voices among Gen Z, especially Gen Z women. If you can find me that stat, I'd be really interested. Young women are overwhelmingly listening to this young woman's podcast because it's rooted in truth more often than not. It is orienting them towards Jesus Christ. It's challenging their perspectives from their favorite liberal influencer who posts clothes and movie reviews for a living that is now melting down on the internet right now about the dumbest thing ever, probably because they are getting a gazillion-dollar paycheck to do so by their management company and their agency. They're terrified of Allie Beth Stuckey, and Hillary Clinton, of all people, feels the need to go put out a hit piece on Allie Beth Stuckey because she's resonating with people, because she's changing women's minds, because she's doing everything she can to recapture honest femininity rooted in truth. Back to our theological journey with theologian Hillary Rodham Clinton and the like in a moment. But first, I want to talk about something that's become so important to me, not just as I try to discern reality at large with everything going on in the world out there, but also to take ownership and discern reality of what's happening in my own health, especially after becoming a mom. I have realized that every single decision that I make about my health is not just about me anymore. It's about showing up for my daughter Isla and being present for all of her milestones, to keep up with her with all of the crazy energy that I have for years and years to come. And that is a totally different kind of motivation. But here is our problem. Our healthcare system is built to be reactive. You wait until something is really wrong and then you try to fix it. So when you want to take a proactive approach, it can be really hard to know where to even start. That's exactly why I have been teaming up with our friends at Jevity. They make proactive health easier than ever. Jevity offers different membership tiers so that you can choose what fits your needs. You get comprehensive at-home blood draws that test over 100 different health markers, way beyond what your standard checkup at the doctor's office would ever cover. And then they give you personalized health plans with custom supplement protocols, access to functional longevity specialists for ongoing guidance, plus discounts on supplements that you might need in the future and specialty testing. This whole process was so easy for me. They sent a phlebotomist to my house. They drew my blood at my kitchen table within like 2 days, which is way faster than when your doctor orders these things. I had a huge roadmap blueprint of everything going on in my body, what was functioning really well and what wasn't, and all of the recommendations I needed to take ownership of my health moving forward. Jevity is now available in 47 different states across the country, so it's ready for you too if you are ready to be there for the people that you love, not just today, but for decades to come. You guys can use code Isabel at the link in today's show notes for 20% off, because investing in your health now means so much more time with the people that matter the most. Interestingly, I find it fascinating that these people don't really seem to understand a differentiation either between sympathy and empathy. And in her response to this hit piece last week, Allie Beth made her episode on Friday in part about this difference between empathy and sympathy. I think this is a really important differentiation as we get into the second half of our conversation. So take a listen.
But a little TLDR. Empathy means to be in someone's feelings. So it's different than sympathy. You feel for someone. It's different than compassion. That means to suffer with someone. And it's different than love, to seek the best for another person. Empathy actually means to feel how someone else feels. And it's not always bad, but empathy becomes bad when it blinds you to both reality and morality. You are so deeply in one person's feelings that you no longer can think objectively. You no longer consider the person on the other side of the equation. And then you make decisions based on how much you feel for one person rather than on what is true and moral and just. So, for example, you feel so deeply for the poor woman carrying a pregnancy that you forget about the existence, the rights, and the pain of the baby inside the womb. You feel so deeply for the man who thinks that he's a woman that you ignore biological reality and the rights and the privacy of girls and women. Empathy becomes toxic when it leads you to do 3 things. 1, to affirm sin. 2, to validate lies, and 3, to support destructive policies. Christians instead are not called to callousness, but we're called to love. And the thing about love that distinguishes it from empathy is that it is inextricably intertwined with the truth. God is love, 1 John 4:8. He gets to define it. And he tells us what it is in 1 Corinthians 13. And in verse 6, we read that love never rejoices in wrongdoing, but rejoices with the the truth. So you cannot have in Christianity love without truth. And this is the dichotomy that Jesus represented.
Hugely important differentiation between sympathy and empathy. We were designed with the capacity for both by God because both connect us to other human beings in an important and crucial way to maintaining our common shared humanity. But way more often than not, the vast majority of the time, what you are actually supposed to be feeling is not empathy. It is not taking on the feelings of someone in a situation that you yourself would never be in. It's actually sympathy. You feel bad for the situation that person is going through, but you're not supposed to be injecting it into your own soul, taking on the feelings of those other people. And empathy, again, is not a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing. It was designed intentionally by God to connect us with one another. But as Allie Beth so beautifully put it in her show last Friday, empathy becomes bad when it blinds you, when it takes away your capacity for reason, when it removes your ability to see a situation logically, because our emotions, which we know from scripture and from sacred tradition alike, are unreliable. Ultimately, we have to rely on the source of truth, God, Jesus Christ with a capital T, before we rely on our own shaky, unreliable, tenable emotions that change with every single passing moment, let alone day. When we allow empathy to blind us and let our emotions become the only, and I won't even say primary, the only vehicle to effectuate social change, that's when we have situations of women melting down every 5 minutes on the internet. And this last week, I've maybe seen more of this than ever before, certainly since Trump took office last January, and every woman on my TikTok was talking about going into the hospital for voluntary hysterectomies because they couldn't possibly imagine getting pregnant and giving birth in a Trump America, which is crazy. But my entire feed is filled with women freaking out this last week, not just about ICE, but about 20 million other different things too, because we have allowed our feelings to be manipulated by those with a nefarious intention to do so in the mainstream media, from our previously elected officials a la Hillary Clinton and the like, and social media as well. There is maybe no more perfect example than perhaps the most influential woman on the planet, the host of sex podcast Call Her Daddy, Alex Cooper, of what happens when you have allowed your emotions to become completely manipulated and blind to reality. And let me just say this before I launch into my response to Alex Cooper's bawling her eyes out video, screaming the F word at people last week. I want to say this. Your feelings are not bad. And we'll come back to this in a few minutes. I actually am kind of the crusader right now for facts don't care about your feelings worked really well for millennials, and abandon your feelings worked really well for millennials, but feelings matter too. The reason that Generation Z is so primarily driven by feelings is probably because our education system hijacked them through what they called SEL learning, social and emotional learning, to put our feelings above the facts. But feelings are a much more powerful vehicle to effectuate change than facts are. And when feelings and facts are married, when you can marry emotion and logic and reason, that's when you can accomplish the good and true and beautiful. So I don't think we need to be abandoning our feelings outright. But if you want a good example of what happens when feelings have been hijacked and manipulated to become the only vehicle to effectuate social change, and we lose all capacity for reason and logic, look no further than the Daddy Gang host herself, Alex Cooper. Just as a reminder, when it comes to women's empowerment, some recent episodes that this woman has posted on her $125 million podcast deal, not even an exaggeration. Her net worth is $60+ million. And in 2024, she signed a $125 million podcast deal for Call Her Daddy. Some recent titles of her episodes for a show about women's empowerment and women's rights, as she's going to tell us in a moment, were interviewing the Chainsmokers, title Cheating, Threesomes, and Toxic Exes, an abortion story, or interviewing Camila Cabello about breakup sex greater than. Nice. This woman has now decided that she is the spokesperson for women's rights in America. And she is deeply traumatized that women don't have it better in America in the year of our Lord, 2026. Some of you may have seen my response to this on Instagram already, but I want to go through this on here with you as well, because I have a lot of shock and awe in response to the claims made here. Please join me. I saw it, so now you have to as well, in reacting to Father Cooper, Alex Cooper, on TikTok from last week.
When people talk about patriarchy and misogyny and they try to give examples, I love it. But I do think the most obvious glaring example of the patriarchy is the fact that we have never, in the history of time, ever had a woman be the president of the United States.
We have never, in the history of time, had a woman be the president of the United States. Do we just forget about the last several millennia of women's history? Women in America just got the right to vote 5 minutes ago in the grand scheme of the history of time. And in the tiny blip in the radar that has been the last 250 years, the progression of women's rights over the past century is astounding to behold. In less than a century, we had a woman vice president. We've had several women candidates for vice president and president alike. We have women sitting in the House of Representatives and the Senate. We have women all over the Supreme Court. But because a woman never in the history of time, of all humanity, has not been the president of the United States, that is the clearest evidence we could ever ask for that we live in a patriarchy. Let's keep going.
It almost has become, oh, well, that's just normal. No, that's not normal. Men are the only ones who have ever held the highest position in the government. No woman. But yes, we're so equal. Oh, well, actually, we're legally not equal to men. And that is a great point. How could a woman even be the president of the United States when we don't even have equal rights to half of the population that the woman would be governing over?
Here we go. So this is the perfect example of what happens when you lie to generations of women and you repeat the same parroted talking points that feel hurtful, right? It hurts as a woman to hear you are less than in society. You are unequal to men. You have been put down by evil, angry, misogynistic, patriarchal men, and you will always be under their shoe until what? Until we have equal rights in society. I ask this question probably 400 times a week, so I think it bears asking again. Anyone out there, please, a singular person, can you please answer the question, what rights do men have in America that women don't? Name me one. What right under law does a man have in the United States of America that a woman does not have? I'll wait. I will wait. I will wait till the crickets start singing. Because honestly, the only answer, and people have asked this in her comment section repeatedly, the only answer these people can give you over and over and over again is bodily autonomy, which is really just code word for abortion. Emma Ridley asks in her comment section, what rights don't we have? LOL. Sweet girl, ... Everyone is like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? This is a joke, yeah? Let's start with bodily autonomy and go from there. Women have rights to bodily autonomy. Just like men. Newsflash, rape is illegal. Homicide is illegal. Assault is illegal. What they're really trying to say is that we don't have a constitutionally, legally enshrined right to kill our own children. To abortion. Men don't have that right either, by the way. Men do not have the right to go stab their 2-year-old because they don't want to be a dad anymore. That's called murder. So I don't understand the men have certain legal rights in America that women don't have thing. But I'm sick and friggin' tired of hearing about it from every gazillion-dollar net worth influencer in their ivory towers wearing designer clothes and $800 PJs telling me, well, we as women just have it so bad. We as women are so subservient to men. We live in such an evil patriarchy. Shut up. Just shut up. It's exhausting, actually. She keeps going, though. She doubles and triples down. This gets really good.
Anyways, I interviewed Michelle Obama, and I was just talking about this on my Instagram, but I wanted to say it here. We are in a horrific time in the world. There are no words to even describe what is happening. And I think as a creator, she talks about how you essentially, if you have a platform, you have a loaded gun. And I think it's painful where I'm like, it feels so self-indulgent to be posting selfies and to be posting all these things right now when it's like, look at what is happening in the world. And I'm not saying that people need to use their platforms 24/7 for change and to be so serious, because I think something that's so beautiful about the internet is it brings such levity and humor, and it gives us an outlet from all the fucked up that's going on in the world. However, when Michelle talks about the reason someone should not have a third term is because we need new voices, we need new ideas, and that is where we all come in.
So, of course, it's a promo. Go watch my interview with Michelle Obama, which is extra slimy on top of all of this. I'm going to yell and scream the F word at my own followers on the internet about how bad women have it. Oh, by the way, go watch my podcast, my interview with the former First Lady of the United States and me, the most powerful female podcaster on the face of the planet, because women have it so bad. We are living in such a terrible time in human history right now. She literally said that. The sheer amount of societal disconnect and privilege it takes for you to look around at your life right now and say, you're including yourself in that, are living in such a bad time in human history. Girl, we as women were so privileged to be born into the single greatest time and the single most equalized society, progressive society for women in the most amazing country in the history of humanity in all of time. You want to talk about all of time and all of history? The fact that you as a woman were born in the United States of America in the 1990s and now are the #1 female podcaster in the world and signed a $125 million Spotify contract means that you are not living in a terrible time in human history, actually. You are living in the most privileged time in human history and should be abundantly grateful for that and using your platform to speak on behalf of women all over the world who are not fortunate to be born into the United States of America in the 21st century. Right now, as we speak, there are women who are legally barred from making noise with their mouth. In Afghanistan, under Taliban rule, who, by the way, just a couple of days ago, permanently forbade any woman from ever receiving an education. So that's where we're at right now. Brought to you by the policies of Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, the Clinton ideology that carried over to the Biden administration that said, we should just abandon Afghanistan, actually. Just give it all back to the Taliban. Look how that has gone for everyone. Right now, in Afghanistan, it is illegal under Taliban rule for a woman to speak out loud outside of her own home because a woman's voice is alluring and can be sexualized by men too easily. You already can't show your skin, your face, your hair, anything. In Iran, as we've seen the last several years and especially the last several weeks, young women daring to show a sliver of their hair are being dragged into the middle of the street and beat to death, tortured by the Iranian morality police because they had the audacity to show their hair. You are hosting a podcast telling women to have as much sex as humanly possible with as many people on the planet as possible. You do not have to deal with a horrible time in human history. Let's be abundantly clear about that. Women just got the right to drive a car in Saudi Arabia like 5 minutes ago. And we're over here complaining about how we live in a patriarchy. My life sucks so much with my gold breakfast spoon and my piles of cash and my interview with Michelle Obama, the First Lady of the United States. The audacity to say we live in a horrible time in human history. Oh, by the way, go watch my podcast. Go give me monetization from my views. Go make my advertisers happy. It is disgusting to say that. But again, she probably really believes it. She feels it. Her emotions have been hijacked because she is the victim, just like so many in our generation, of women constantly being programmed by the Michelle Obamas and Hillary Clintons and mainstream medias of the world to genuinely believe we live in a patriarchy. Women are second-class citizens. It will always be horrible for you. Your life sucks. And we internalize that. Here we go. Let's keep going.
Older generation did some great things and did some horrible things, but it is now time for our generation to actually step up and to talk and to be honest about what we want out of this country. I don't know. I personally left just feeling inspired, and I'm not saying that Call Her Daddy is going to just change overnight, but I do promise to have honest conversations. I have done multiple episodes on women's rights, and so many people and I'm like, if human rights and women being equal to men is controversial to you, then you can get the fuck off my page. Women are still not equal to men.
If women's rights and women being equal to men is controversial to you, you can get the F off my page. Again, would like to ask the question, Alex Cooper, or any singular human being alive on the planet, what rights in America does a man have that a woman does not have? Are all of your episodes about women's rights, like this one you just hosted, an abortion story? Newsflash, men don't have the right to kill their children either, nor should we be fighting for that in a society that actually values equal rights and human dignity. When I first saw this TikTok, I laughed. I showed it to my husband. He laughed, and then he actually got really pissed off, which was funny. It's funny watching his reaction to this now that we have a daughter, especially because he's so passionate about the brainwashing and the propaganda and everything that is tailored towards women in a way that I've never seen before. He's always been interested in it, certainly, especially given what I do for a living, and just being plugged into the political movement in particular. But now that he is a girl dad, holy moly, this man went off for a solid 30 minutes just screaming into the void about how annoying this video was and how completely out of touch with reality it was. And it's cool to see dads be so passionate about wanting to protect their daughters from this. But after I listened to my husband's little rant, I immediately thought of something that I had seen a few years ago of a bunch of white liberal women just incoherently screaming in the woods. I don't know if you guys remember this. This had happened, I think in 2024, if I'm remembering correctly. It was right around my birthday time. And Libs of TikTok and Ollie London and everybody had been tweeting about this thing called a rage ritual retreat, where women were spending $4,000 to go on a retreat to experience their rage, pent up from all of this toxic empathy that they have been brainwashed into, so that they could scream in the woods, deal with their anger, and smash sticks on the ground. In case you missed it then, here's what this looked like. Yeah, $4,000 price tag to go on this retreat for someone to scream at you, "What do you feel?" And everyone says, "I feel afraid. I feel angry. I feel scared." Without a marriage to logic and reason, raw emotion by itself can so easily be hijacked and manipulated. This retreat wasn't designed to help women process their anger or work through their anger or come out on the other side of their anger. It and every outrage headline and every hit piece written by Hillary Clinton and the like, and every crying influencer on the internet are not designed to make you feel better or to apply your emotions in a tangible way to actually help people. To the contrary, they are designed to make you more angry, more depressed, more anxious, to hijack your emotions further. And this is the very problem with modern leftism, hijacking our empathy and turning our emotions into toxic vehicles that end up just communicating evil policy as a result, right? Women have lost our ability, uniquely, more than men. There are men who fall victim to this too, but clearly this seems to be a female problem in our society. Women are losing our ability in real time to discern reality and what is actually empathetic. Not a silly political woke version of that, but actually empathetic or to pursue the good and true and beautiful, because our culture has used cult-like tactics. Genuinely, this feels like a cult, to hijack your emotions to believe that the wrong things are good. And this is very biblical, right? We believe ultimately, in the grand scheme of human history, that lies will become truth and truth will become lies. But you are being told that the opposite of what is actually empathetic is good. That you are a moral person if you believe evil things about society instead of actually taking the time to discern what is good or true or beautiful and fight on behalf of those things. The thing is, this conditioning is so complicated because, as we talked about the differentiation between sympathy and empathy, in hijacking empathy, our society is conditioning us to not only feel deeply, but to feel so deeply that we take on the pain and the burden of other people in a quest to prove our morality. And I think this has become so obvious to me, especially with all of the ICE protests going on, when you see all of these women take to the internet to say, that could have been me. That could have been me in the car, hitting a police officer with my car. That could have been me trying to punch a police officer in the face, and I could have died as a result of that. And you're hearing Jake Tapper and Abby Phillips and the CNNs and MSNBCs and the news stations of the world constantly tell you that ICE is just indiscriminately pulling people out of the crowd, pulling people out of their homes, and killing you on the spot, executing you in cold blood, shooting you in the back of the head in the middle of the street, that it could have been you, instead of marrying our emotion and empathy with logic and reason to say any loss of human life is tragic and we should feel for that tragedy because human beings are created in the divine image of God and we share that common shared humanity. Any loss of life is tragic. But it literally could not have been you, actually, if you weren't in that situation in the first place. Logically, reasonably speaking, that's where our feelings and logic have to come together. But instead of having that harder conversation that requires a lot more nuance and isn't quite as clickbaity for the internet or for our news stations that are relying on ratings, wanting to keep you watching in order to stay afloat, women are making videos of themselves with like fake blood all over their faces and crying on the internet saying, I can't unhear the sound of the car crashing after the gunshots. Justice for Renee Nicole Good. I can't tell you how many videos just like this one I have seen in the last week.
No! No! Shame! Shame! Oh my God! What the you just, what the did you do?
As she cries and cries and cries on the internet. Again, it's hard. It's sad. It is devastating. It is tragic for any loss of life to happen. But reasonably, if we can marry our logic and our critical thinking with our emotions, that couldn't literally just be you, actually. You don't need to literally feel the pain of the death of Renee Good as if it were happening to you. That is toxic empathy. Only God, this is a hard truth, so I want you to hear it. Only God has the power to take on the actual pain of others. Period. Full stop. That's not to say that it's impossible to experience empathy. To the contrary, actually, we experience real empathy because of our common shared humanity that is rooted in our creation collectively in the divine image of God. But if you find yourself, like that woman in the video or the few others that I'm about to show you, bawling your eyes out on the internet, literally feeling the actual pain of the death of somebody else, saying that could have been me, it is highly possible that you have made politics and woke outrage the God of your life, that you have created an idol of whatever the approved woke issue of the day actually is. It's not just the killing of Renee Good or Alex Preddy and all of these protests that we're seeing right now. This has been a long-standing thing for a while. A few months ago, one woman filmed herself and posted it to TikTok crying over the big, beautiful bill passing. The budget bill passing. Watch this. The budget. She's crying over the budget. Taking off her glasses, wiping away her tears. The big, beautiful bill passed. I'm so sorry. Again, I'm sorry. This is my fault. I'm feeling this because it happened to me. That we passed a budget bill in Congress. This is toxic empathy. One person says that in the midst of having to coexist with the right, this woman said this a few weeks ago, she is actually she feels crazy and that she's having a complete mental breakdown, that she is so exhausted. She's exhausted. Listen to this.
At what point do we just stop coexisting with these people? Because honestly, I'm exhausted. I'm physically, mentally, and emotionally drained. I have to put on a face every day like everything's fine, and I have to go to work, and I have to sell shit, and I have to come home and hang out with my kid and do his homework and then put him on the bus to go to school while people are literally getting shot in the street and we're watching it and they're telling us we're not saying what we're saying. I just feel like I'm going crazy. Like 90% of the people that I have to see every day live in a completely different reality than I do. And I'm crying on the internet. I am just so exhausted. And I don't know whether to prepare for World War or Civil War. Like, what do you do? It's my first one, kind of scared. What do you do?
So she literally believes that we are headed for war. She says, this is my first war. I'm kind of scared. I don't know whether to prepare for World War or Civil War right now. And her caption is, F it, I'm crying on the internet. We all should be #ICE. She says, I feel like I'm going crazy. Typically something that people say when they're being gaslit over and over and over again. I feel like I'm going crazy. I'm not the crazy one, right? And then says that 90+% of the people that she sees every single day, the people she works with, the people at her kid's school, the neighbors that she lives next to, live in a completely different reality than she does. But because of the hijacking of the manufactured outrage cycle and the programming of your feelings as the only vehicle to communicate and effectuate social change, removing logic and reality from the conversation entirely, that is not a red flag to her to think, okay, I feel like I'm going crazy. 90+% of the people I engage with every day live in a totally different reality from me. Is it possible that they are living in reality and I'm not? Am I allowing my emotions to get the better of me? Am I allowing myself to be hijacked by the narrative? Am I being a useful idiot to these people? Not that I'm an idiot, but in the colloquial sense, am I being the useful idiot to these people to just further their agenda? No. Instead, she says, I'm preparing for war. She doubles and triples and quadruples down because she doesn't even realize that her exhaustion is a symptom of actual brainwashing. When she says, I'm so exhausted. I don't even know how to coexist with people anymore. I don't know how to live my normal life anymore. She doesn't realize that that's because that's not how she's supposed to be feeling right now. She gets further confirmation bias that that's exactly how she's supposed to be feeling right now. And 90+% of the people out there are the crazy ones, not me. They're the ones in an alternate reality, not me. I said this a few days ago when we did our manufactured outrage cycle episode, which I highly recommend you guys listen to, about the whole I'm exhausted thing. Yes, you are exhausted. And that actually is the point. The left is doing everything they possibly can to literally break you, to make you snap psychologically through repeat stress cycles that are based on whatever the issue of the day actually is. To put it on yourself, to internalize all of this into your own soul, because that could have been you. And everyone out there who is different from you is probably getting ready to launch a civil war against you. So prepare for war. Prepare to die in the next 5 minutes. That stress seems to ramp up every single time throughout this cycle. 10 years ago, I don't recall the narrative being they're going to literally kill you. They said they would take away your rights as a woman about abortion or birth control. They said these people don't think the same as you, blah, 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 blah. But I don't recall until very, very recently these people who disagree with you, i.e. the right, the evil MAGA, amoral agenda Trump people, as articulated so eloquently by Hillary Clinton, are going to kill you. Prepare for civil war. That's where we're at right now. And of course that's going to break people. Of course that's going to make you exhausted. Soldiers coming home from actual war deal with things like post-traumatic stress disorder because they are constantly dealing with a fear for their life. They are watching things happen and internalizing them based on what they're seeing. And if all these white liberal women are seeing is what CNN and MSNBC and Hillary Clinton and Alex Cooper are telling them, of course they're going to be stressed to the point of feeling like someone is going to shoot them in the street tomorrow, because that's what everybody is saying. As people participate in this and make you so exhausted, whether it be Alex Cooper or Hillary Clinton, I don't even think all of them realize that they're doing it, and they may even have good intentions. But they are hijacking your emotions. They are manipulating your capacity for empathy to break you into effectuating the wrong answers for social change. Okay, that's where we're going to put an ad. You can keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Right there. So, rather than crying on the internet and saying, F it, I'm crying on the internet, hashtag FICE, what do we do when we are exhausted? Perhaps, and I know this might be a radical suggestion, instead of crying about it to post on TikTok, maybe you should try giving that pain and frustration and anger directly to God instead, because ultimately, only He has the power and the grace to truly transform the hearts of the people around us. We are not supposed to go to the God of social media or the God of Hillary Clinton's approval or the God of Call Her Daddy podcast host Alex Cooper to validate our broken emotions and to continue exhausting us further, especially as Christians, especially from a scriptural, biblical worldview. Matthew chapter 11 talks about this so beautifully when Christ says, "Come to me, all who are labor and all who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Instead of continuously being rooted in exhaustion, we can give all of it to God. We can say, I'm so exhausted. I feel like I'm going crazy. I feel like I live in a different reality from the people around me. We can give it all to God. And instead of being more tired and more exhausted with every passing day, we can find rest for our souls and find hope for tomorrow instead of just wallowing in despair. Despair is an interesting word there because we so often forget despair is a sin. Oof. Gut check. Not only is despair a sin, it is a mortal sin that deeply, deeply, deeply separates us from God and severs our connection with Him. The Catechism of the Catholic Church, in paragraph 2091, in case you are interested in looking this up for yourself, says this about despair. By despair, man ceases to hope for his personal salvation from God, for help in attaining it, or for the forgiveness of sins. Despair is contrary to God's goodness, to His justice, for the Lord is faithful to His promises and to His mercy. Promises like, I will work all things together for good. Give me all of your burdens, and I will give you rest. Stop despairing. Have hope. And the one commandment that is exactly 365 times in Scripture, do not be afraid. Pay very close attention to the people in the media who are encouraging your despair and continuing to monger to your fear to make you afraid, instead of trying to redirect you into hope, into faith, into fearlessness. Are they actually wanting your sympathy or your empathy, more importantly, to create positive change in society? Probably not. If people are encouraging you to tap further into your despair, further into your fear, and further into chaos, I think they're simply trying to manufacture more chaos, not actually effectuate positive social change. And that's not to say that we as Christians don't take on an active role in society in trying to transform this world to be a little bit more like the next one. To the contrary, actually, Christ calls us to be two things, to be salt and to be light. What do those two things have in common? They transform what is around them and they radically disrupt their surroundings in an obvious and sometimes very, very jarring way. But when we as women can take the time to marry our emotions with our logical capacity for reason, I think it becomes a whole lot more clear what causes truly are just and what we actively should be fighting for in trying to make this world a little bit more like the next one. If we are really serious about ending sexual violence and exploitation of women and children, we should be fighting to deport those who are regularly raping and abusing women and children and taking action against the cartels that are funneling human trafficking into our country every single day. If we are really serious about ending gun violence and mass shootings from illegal firearms and protecting our kids from being shot, we should take on an active role in preventing illegal firearms from coming into our country, largely across the southern border. If we are really serious about lifting people out of poverty, and we really care about that, to make sure that no one ever hungers or thirsts, we should be championing responsible capitalism, which has lifted more people out of poverty than any economic system in the history of time, the history of the world. If we are really, really serious and we care about honoring the dignity of all human life and having equal rights for all people, we should be fighting day and night, tooth and nail, for an end to abortion. An industry that has killed 1/3 of my generation and 1.1 million innocent children last year alone in the United States of America. It is the single greatest genocide the world has ever seen. If we are serious about wanting kids to feel comfortable in their own skin and to love themselves, to be truly affirmed by society, we should be fighting every single day to make sure that the answer to feeling uncomfortable in your skin is not to chop your breasts off and to chemically or surgically castrate yourself at the age of 12 or 13, like the so-called compassionate doctors and politicians alike have been fighting for in America for the past several years. I could keep going. If we're really serious about protecting the environment and we care so deeply about stewarding our natural resources, we should be advocating for actual evidence-based solutions, for example, in forest management, not just to never touch a single tree again and call that conservation. Newsflash, California, for example, has so many deadly wildfires because of that inaction. I could keep going, but I think you get the point. Our empathy, and more often our sympathy, actually, that we call empathy, our feelings at large are meaningful. They matter. They are not to be thrown away. They connect us to each other and, more importantly, to the divine, to God. But it's time we have to ask ourselves, how are we channeling those feelings, especially as Christians? Are we orienting them toward the pursuit of the good and the true and the beautiful? Not relying on our own intuition that has the capacity to be very, very, very wrong and to go along with the crowd instead of go along with truth? Or are we allowing the enemy to hijack our emotions and turn our feelings into toxic empathy to actually manifest more evil and more chaos into the world? Something tells me that Hillary Clinton probably doesn't know how to answer that question. I'll say it again for the record. Allie Beth Stuckey, my sweet friend, is not suicidal. She is not going anywhere. And you should go buy her book, Toxic Empathy, because it's actually an incredibly compelling read. I read it last year when it first came out, and it is now at the top of the Amazon bestseller lists all over again this week. Thank you, Hillary Clinton, for that. Congratulations to my sweet friend Allie Beth on the big leagues. When the Clintons put a hit piece on you, that's how you know you're doing something right. The universe is telling you you're doing all of the right things. We'll be back tomorrow for more of the Isabel Brown Show. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and find us on your favorite podcast platform to leave a 5-star review. And most importantly, if you always want to watch the show with 0 ads and some very exciting opportunities only available to you over there, join us on Daily Wire Plus. We'll see you guys tomorrow.